Okay, not sure what your channel's called now, if it's P226 Nuts still or VG10 Animal Mother. I can't remember. I'm subscribed and it comes up, so. But you'd made a video response to me, and it was a really well thought out video response, and I really appreciate it. There's a piece of it, and you covered a lot of ground, so I'll just kind of try and go point by point, but we'll see how I do. You'd mentioned you were talking to somebody, and congratulations on that. And I will give you the same advice that a friend of mine had gave me, because I'm getting back in the saddle when it comes to relationships. He had told me, he said, hire slow and fire fast. So that's probably not a bad piece of advice, because I've had some relationships that have lasted too long because, I don't know, reasons. But either way, I hope it goes well. You'd also touched on the firearm thing, and I don't disagree on the AR-15 thing. I don't know. I feel like I've said this out here before. I had a Mini 14 years ago, and my issue was that the caliber was my problem. I know that sounds kind of foolish, but I got a 22 for smaller stuff, and I've got a full size rifle for bigger stuff, and it fell in between, and I probably will revisit it somehow. There's a few handguns I'm looking at. After that, I'll probably get one of those Tippmann M22s, I think they're called. It's a AR-15, but it's in 22. Just because I feel like it's something I could shoot the piss out of and kind of get into the platform and stuff like that. And rather I go 223 or something else, I don't know, but I don't know. Maybe that's a foolish thought, but that's kind of my thought of a starting point. The other thing that you mentioned was the hormone thing. And I'm not saying that some people don't need it. I think a lot of people, it's a lifestyle thing. So, for me personally, I had a lot of stressors in my life and stuff like that, and so like kind of what I did was, one was the microplastics thing. I kind of cut all the microplastics out, which I think made a difference. I took some steps to protect my sleep, which I also think made a difference. There's some more stuff I got to do in terms of sleep, but that's going to take some time. And I worked a job that was making me miserable. There were people in my life that were making me miserable, so I kind of cut all that stuff out. And to tell you the truth, before that, I made those changes. I was tired all the time. I didn't sleep for shit. I had no energy. I was I was fucking miserable. And I actually got checked out for testosterone, and I was told that for a man my age, I was good. And I made those changes in my life, and I feel like a completely different person. So my guess is that my 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 testosterone's probably pretty high right now, I would think. Like I don't know, like I feel like I can whip my weight in Wildcats, you know, and I work with a lot of guys who are under 30, and I'm middle aged, and 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 I'll at the very least keep up with any of them, you know. Um, so you know, I think that I think that the food thing will help that along too. That's my own personal opinion, right? And I all I can do is go off of how I feel. So, and and you know, since making a lot of those changes, you know, like things like you know, like sex drive has gone up a lot, right? You know, so it's, you know, like you know, I made some moves in the right direction is what I'm trying to say. Um, and and when it comes to food, I think you're. It sounds like you and I, in a lot of ways, are on the same wavelength with whole foods. You know, like you said, meat, vegetables, you know, cheese, eggs. You know, um, I'm looking at at doing some stuff with, because I don't know, in my lunch and stuff like that. I find it handy when I'm out in the field to just have a sandwich and something, you know. So um, I'm thinking that I'll probably get into making bread for that. This way I can have something without all the preservatives and stuff like that. And maybe with some healthier grains like buckwheat and, you know, stuff like that. And I'm actually looking at going the bread maker route. I know how to bake. Um, I can make biscuits like nobody's business. The only thing I failed at was I tried sourdough, and I don't have the skill for that. But you know, I know how to do it. I just want an easier way to do it. But yeah. Um, but yeah, like the goal is, you know, more so that being able to shop the kind of the outside of the store, so to speak, where all like your kind of more fresh stuff is. I You know, and it's not to say that I wouldn't have some cheat things. Like you were mentioning cookies. I love oatmeal raisin cookies, and you know, the summertime I don't mind having a little bit of mint chocolate chip ice cream or something like that. But and also another thing that I gotta do too is because like sometimes my job, I'm in equipment or driving a truck or whatever. And those days are, you know, less, you know, it's not really labor intensive, but there's some days where I'm out in the outdoors and doing manual labor. So which is probably more often than not. So I'll go and I'll bring like a couple of those sports drinks with me in the summertime, because you know it's over 90 degrees and you're working outside. But I'm actually thinking that I'm going to probably start making Switchel, just because that probably is a healthier option. And you mentioned some places for recipes, and for me personally, and the funny thing is, I like to cook, and that's probably a lot of my uncles on my mother's side were um, all really good cooks, and so, and I kind of picked up a little bit of that, not completely, but I picked up some, you know. And I watched that Townsend's, Kent Rollins, and the cookbook that I go off of was the same cookbook that my favorite uncle used all the time, and it's actually the White House cookbook from 1887. It's a really good cookbook. I suggest if you if you're interested to get it, because it does everything from cooking to baking to even butchering. It tells you stuff on that too. So it's a good book. And yeah, like I mean, I like I say, I'm not like when it comes to like weight and stuff like that. I'm not super heavy. I'm actually a lot heavier than I look. Um, like probably doesn't paint a real accurate picture, but I'm sitting at I'm sitting at 260 pounds right now, and I don't really look it. You know, like I don't really, you know, I don't really have a belly, and my Wranglers have a 40-inch waist. You know what I mean? Like I'm kind of a tanky built guy, I guess. But and I know I'll never be thin. You know, like I think at one point, and I'm talking like what I'm talking about as an adult. I mean, like when I was since being over 25, the lightest I got down to was like 220, and everybody was asking me if I was sick, and and I was just miserable because I was walking around hungry and sore all the time because I was running. I think I was running like 3 miles a day, and being a being a stouter guy, that's a lot of impact. So, but yeah, so like I say, I'm working on things. My goal is to be able to do what I want to do and do it for a long time, right? That's kind of my goal, and do it in a sustainable manner. Well, it's probably kind of rambly, but I'll cut that off there. Everyone, take care.